Hello, November. And I start by reading the book Nor Crystal Tears by Alan Dean Foster. Please admire this cover. I have rarely loved a cover more. Look, bug person. Okay, so this book is, I've never read anything by Alan Dean Foster, but my basic understanding is that he wrote a series of books about this, future where humankind and these insect-like aliens called the Franks have this big, galactic commonwealth, and, they're together. This book, however, is about the first contact between those two races, and I freaking loved it. I thought it was such a fun idea. Rio is the Franks character, and he essentially, how shall I explain this? So the thing with the Franks is when they're larvae, they go through all this education, and they all tend to be very practical, and they all pick quite easily what they're going to do with their lives. But Rio always found that very difficult. He wasn't really quite sure what he wanted to do, so he ended up becoming an agricultural specialist. But he wasn't as sure about it in the same way that his fellows were sure about their particular pursuits. And then one day he reads a letter that his premate, which is sort of like fiancé-ish, kinda, gets from her. Anyway, she gets this letter from her cousin, and Rio reads it, and the cousin was telling them about this insane encounter he had because he's on a spaceship exploring, and he and his crew came across a ship that had been damaged, and it was something they didn't recognize at all, so they went aboard and they found these horrible creatures. And so Rio becomes obsessed with the idea of going to find out more about these aliens, and goes on this whole quest to get to the home world and to actually find more information, and eventually discovers a secret, semi-secret army base where it turns out they're keeping some of these aliens, who of course are the humans, and it's a lot of fun. My favorite thing about it was that Foster chooses to tell the story from the bug people's perspective, so it's all about how strange and mysterious and horrifying they find the humans, which is fun because of course the humans feel the same way about them, but it's just really interesting to see it from their perspective, because it's easy for us to understand why somebody would be horrified by a 4-foot tall praying mantis, but it's interesting to see it from that praying mantis's perspective of humans are so strange, and our skeletons are on the inside, and we have these weird little eyes, and from his perspective we're so strange and frightening, but also he thinks immediately we would be such good allies. So that's what this is, and I really enjoyed it. And I'm very glad that I happened to find it at a used bookstore, or rather, I guess it was a regular bookstore, but it had some used science fiction books for $1, and I was like, oh my god, I want this. So I'm, glad that all happened. Today I finished The Girl Who Kicked the Hornet's Nest by Stieg Larsson, and this is the third book of the Millennium Trilogy, which are all about Lisbeth Salander and Mikael Blomkvist, and it was alright. I liked it, but I wouldn't say it was great. It was pretty dry, I think, honestly. Somehow the series has gotten drier as it's gone on, and I can kind of understand why the English language adaptation of it into movies only made the first one, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. I love that movie, but I'm not really interested in watching a movie about the second or third books. Anyway, this sets this takes place directly after the second book, which ended with, spoilers, Elizabeth getting almost killed by her father. Okay, I was interrupted, and I don't remember where I was. Right, so the second book ended with Zalachenko shooting her in the head, or whatever. Maybe Neiman did it, or Niederman did it, but whatever. She got shot in the head. So this book is about her recovery in the hospital and then the trial, because they end up having a trial, which is supposed to be about her having assaulted those, like, motorcycle gang guys, which she, like, totally did, too. But for some reason, like, the trial just kind of ends up, they come out with all of the stuff about the secret, like, part of the, like, Secret Service, that, or not Secret Service, but, like, the Swedish intelligence, like, service or whatever, there's, like, the secret part of it that was doing this Zalachenko thing, and, like, all these different guys get arrested, and it's great, but it's also like, is this how the Swedish justice system works? Well, it's just kind of insane, because the whole, the trial, like, I don't think there was a jury, which, fine, I guess, but it was just very informal and kind of, it was kind of odd, but I guess that's how they do it, I don't know. But anyway, I did like that part. I liked parts of this. I like kind of methodical things where it's just like, we're going to go through how we're going to, you know, here's a problem, and we're going to go through how we solve it. But, like, it's not that interesting. Yeah, it's pretty, not everything gets quite exactly wrapped up by the end, but I think it's all wrapped up well enough that you're like, okay, I don't need to read the next book. Because my plan was, and still is, just to read these 3 that were actually by Larson. I know that there are more books in the series by other people, but I'm really not interested enough in, like, the characters to actually want to read them written by other people. Like, I'm not that invested. So, I'm not going to continue. But, this book was fine. It was alright. And I did like the ending. So, yeah. Also, this is a major spoiler, but it was super wild how really early on, like, that secret agent guy just comes and shoots Zalachenko and he dies, and it's like, you're not even a third of the way into the book, and it's like, what, already? Because you think he's going to be, you know, a big deal, and then it's just like, no, he's dead now. It's like, oh my god. And I kind of liked the bits where we actually saw the behind the scenes of the kind of the secret agent, they're not secret agents, but whatever, the intelligence, like, bureau or whatever characters sort of plotting how to deal with this issue, just because it had shades of John le Carré. It's like, oh, this chapter is a lot like one of his books, except, you know, one of his books would be nothing but this chapter, it would just be this, but, and I love that shit, but, yeah, so I don't know, there's a lot in this book that I enjoyed, and I also kind of had forgotten a lot of details from the second book, since it's been a year or so since I read it, but it came back to me enough, and I was, like, able to follow along pretty well, so, yeah, I think that's enough. It was fine. Hello. I finished reading Good Omens by Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman. Okay, so this is a reread because I read this book like fucking 10 years ago. I don't know, it was in college at some point. And after the TV show came out on Amazon Prime at the end of May, I was like, I need to read the book again. So I finally have. Of course, it took me this long. Who's surprised? Not me. This is a lovely book. I will say that, I like it less than, sorry, this seems weird. I like it less than other things that I've read by Terry Pratchett. I mean, generally I would rank it like Discworld, one of my favorite things. Good Omens is good. And then, like, stuff by Neil Gaiman is, like, pretty good, too, but lacking something, which I feel is maybe some of that Terry Pratchett-ness. I don't know. It's ineffable, right? So anyway, this is a wonderful little fantasy, it's not little, this is a wonderful fantasy book about the apocalypse. That's like what I told my parents. They were just like, what is the show you keep talking about? What's it about? I'm like, the apocalypse. And then it just didn't explain any further than that. Okay. But yeah, it's about the apocalypse. So, the Antichrist has been born, and the 4 horsemen are gathering, and, the demon in charge of delivering the Antichrist to, like, his parents or whatever, who are going to raise him, isn't too keen on the idea of Earth being destroyed ultimately, actually. And he decides to try to convince an angel that he's known for a long-ass time, and who he gets along with quite well, to help him try and influence the Antichrist as he grows up, in the hopes that they can balance each other out, the good versus the evil, and maybe the kid will turn out fairly human, and it'll be okay, and they don't have to have a big war between heaven and hell. Except, of course, they fuck it up. But then things turn out alright in the end. I don't know, it's really, it is a lovely book. And why precisely it doesn't work 100% for me, I don't know, and I can't explain. But I do really enjoy it. I'm just saying I don't like it as much as I wish I did, I guess. It has a lot of really good stuff, though. I love the choice to make Crowley, the demon, be basically like the moral center of the book. Like, he's the character who asks the questions and thinks about the things that you're like, dang, yeah. And there's a lot of just really well-written bits. I mean, the whole thing is well-written, but, like, there's just some sentences and paragraphs that, like, really get you, you know? And it's, yeah, I mean, like, it's a great book. Fucking everybody's heard of it. Why am I even talking, like, would I recommend it? Well, yeah, but fucking who hasn't already read Good Omens? Anyway, delightful, obviously. Weirdly, though, I think I preferred the TV show. And that's not normally something I would say. I think it's just because the show, the miniseries, adaptation adds more to Crowley and Aziraphale's story. We both get to see more of things that were just sort of implied in the book, but also we get, like, the ending, because in the book, well, I mean, it's not like I really want to tell you the ending, but who cares, I will. After everything kind of is over, the book just sort of is like, oh, heaven and hell haven't been bothering the two of them, and maybe it'll be, like, fine. But in the show, they actually give a bit of more reasoning for how they get away with not being, like, prosecuted, I guess, for what they did. And also the show makes their relationship a lot more explicitly, like, romantic, or at the very least, specifically, like the two of them are a pair. Do you know what I mean? And the book does have a few moments that kind of do hint at that, but, like, in the show it's pretty explicitly that's the reading that you're supposed to come away with. So I liked that, and it's weirdly, like, normally I would not be like, hey, the show played up the romantic aspects of these characters' relationship, and I liked that. I think normally I would not like that, but in this case, I guess, like, you give me a 6,000-year-long slow burn forbidden romance, and, like, I mean, that's, like, my favorite tropes. I have to like it, but anyway, also it helps that Michael Sheen's face. But anyway, the book is wonderful. It's funny, it's satirical, it's really biting, honestly, and it's honestly really great. And also it has this wonderful illustration. God, I hope you can see this wonderful drawing of Crowley. The best part, honestly, the best part of the book. It's a good book, but, like, this drawing is the best part. Oh God, okay, I'm gonna shut up, but, like, read Good Omens. because you should. Under the Jolly Roger. Read this. It's the third book of the Bloody Jack Adventures series by L.A. Meyer. And like with the first two, it's got its own video. One last book to finish November. I have read In the Belly of the Bloodhound by L.A. Meyer. This is the fourth book of the Bloody Jack Adventure series, and again, there's gonna be a different video about that, so I'm not gonna talk about it, but I didn't like it as much as the third book, but I still liked it, so yeah. I think that's good enough.